Hi, I think hopefully we are live on Facebook. We're just in the process of setting up, so you might need to bear with us for a moment, but I think it all looks okay, hopefully. So I'm Susan Simmonds, I'm an Engagement Officer for Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust, and we're up here today to give you a virtual tour of Broughton Down Nature Reserve. So my lovely husband John is holding the camera here, and he also has his phone where he can look at comments and questions. So if anybody has any comments or any questions at all whilst we're taking you on this tour, please do put them on there, and he will do his best to have a look every so often and tell me what they are. So if it goes a bit wobbly, then that's the reason why. So what we plan to do then is go on a bit of a walk. We thought we'd start off where we come in normally, through this gate, through the beach and new woodland at the top of the slope. And we wanted to show you this beautiful view as you come in to the nature reserve. So should we make a start on our walk? So Broughton Down is 24 hectares, lovely chalk downland nature reserve in the northwest of Hampshire, and I've got my little handy map to show you where it is. So if I just lay this out, I can just give you an idea. Okay, so if John can just zoom in a little bit, if I lay it down, you can see that we've got Salisbury over here and Winchester over here, and then further north we've got Andover, and Broughton village is just there in the middle, and you'll see Broughton Down Nature Reserve just here. So that gives you a sort of rough idea where we are in the northwest of Hampshire. So the vast majority of the site is this northeast facing slope, and you can see fantastic views. It really is one of my favourite spots, and over lockdown I have to say I've spent quite a lot of time up here. It's so peaceful. It's quite a steep climb to get up here, so you don't often see many people, which is a real bonus, I think. So what we want to do is take you on a walk across the down, and we're going to head over to my favourite spot, which is the only south facing piece where there are lots of beautiful wildflowers, and I'm going to point out lots and lots of things on the way, but as I say, do ask questions and John will hopefully check as we go. Okay, so let's go. So the site is the Triple SI, which is a site of special scientific interest, and the reason that it is that is because it has every stage of succession from bare chalk right up through to this mature beach and new woodland at the top here. And each of those stages are really important for a range of different species, and there are some quite unusual species here actually. So for example, the chalk carpet moth is up here. So it's a really, really special place. You can hear some yellow hammers in the distance. So I thought we could just stop and have a look at some of these lovely ant hills actually. I think these are quite interesting features. So we're on this, as I say, we're on chalk downland. So it's a steep, steep slope which really has protected it from being ploughed or fertilised for agriculture. So it's a beautiful ancient piece of meadow really. And you may have heard that we've actually lost 97% of our wildflower meadows in the last 100 years or so. So these places that we have left are really, really important. The fact that we've got ant hills here indicates that it really is ancient and hasn't been disturbed. And ant hills I think are quite fascinating because you can see it's an active one, so the ants heap up the soil, so you've got lots of loose soil here, and there are certain species that can cope living on an ant hill. They tend to be the trailing species. We've got lady's bedstraw on here. This is this yellow flower here. We've got lots of lovely wild thyme, which smells absolutely lovely if you crush it in your fingers, and we've got some wild basil here as well, which has a bit of a fainter smell than the basil that you might buy in Tesco's, for example. I think anthills are fascinating because ants have got this really interesting association with blue butterflies, particularly the large blue butterfly. They actually take the larvae of the butterfly down into their colony where they milk it, they lick it, and the larvae exude this sugary substance. And that sugary substance feeds the ant colony down there, and in return they look after the larvae, protecting it from predators. But actually there's a twist, because the larvae of the large blue actually feed on the larvae of the ants. And the ants just continue to look after it. Eventually it pupates, and they even accompany the adult butterfly up out of the colony. So it's a great protection mechanism and a sort of symbiotic relationship where they both benefit. So I think that's a really interesting thing about anthills, which I could talk about for far too long probably. Another thing is that green woodpeckers love ants, so you often find a sort of question mark shaped dropping on the top, and that will be the green woodpecker dropping. If you look at it under a microscope, it's full of pieces of ants, so it's quite a fun thing to do with children. Anyway, we should probably move on really, shouldn't we? So really, I guess I ought to say, whilst we're walking, that chalk downland is so important because it's so low in fertility, and that's the key really. So it's very, very shallow soil, free draining, quite exposed up here really, and very few nutrients. So what that means is that the more aggressive species that might otherwise take over can't. They can't cope up here with these few nutrients. So what we have are these very special chalk-loving plants that have a range of adaptations to cope in this environment, and they have a competitive edge. So they survive really, really well up here. And I'm going to point a few of those out to you as we go a little bit further along. So yeah, I mean here this is nice. We've got another anthill, and we've got a couple of bedstraws next to each other. We've got the hedge bedstraw with the white flowers next to the lady's bedstraw, which we've just seen. There's a bit of wild thyme down there on this anthill, and wild basil again. And there's also another plant here, which is eyebright. You can see this little white flower here, and that's quite interesting. That's semi-parasitic. So we do find one or two hemi or semi-parasitic plants up here, like that eyebright, and that means that they can gain some of their nutrients from a host species, so from another species.
So Susan, you mentioned about the bedstraw. Do you want to say why it's called bedstraw?
Oh, so yes, so many years ago I believe that it was used to stuff mattresses, and that's where it gets its name. So it may actually have anti-bedbug or anti-flea properties. So I think that's where the name comes from. So do ask any questions if anybody has anything they want to ask. I'm just going to point out another one down here because I love the name. So this one here, which is quite hard to see, this little tiny white flower is called Squinancywort, and I love the name. It's sort of white to pinkish, and it's also in the bedstraw family, and that's flowering all over the down at the moment. So that's another really nice one. It's got quite a fun name. So let's go on a bit further. I hear lots of grasshoppers up here. We've seen one or two butterflies flying. Quite a nice patch of Squinancywort just over here. You can see quite a bit of it down here with a bit of lady's bedstraw again.
So Louise has just asked, are you seeing lots of butterflies? Do you want to give a word about the kind of butterflies we see up here?
Yeah, so we've seen one or two dark green fritillaries today. We were up here a few weeks ago and there were just many dark green fritillaries. But we've seen one or two of them today, and their caterpillars feed on the hairy violet that we have up here. and the adults like to feed on things like the knapweed, for example. So we've seen some of those. I've seen gatekeepers and I've seen meadow browns today. We popped up here yesterday actually, I think, and we saw some marbled whites as well, so they're definitely on the wing at the moment, but don't think I've seen any others. I'll let you know if I do. So there's another plant you might be interested in just down here. We've got some common rock rose. So this lovely yellow, it's a really lovely sort of lemon yellow flower, and again it's trailing and it copes quite well on the top of those anthills. This is a little anthill here, so it copes quite well on there. So that's the common rock rose. So we've got some wild carrot down here. There's quite a bit of it further along, but I thought I'd point it out as I'm walking past it. This is the wild carrot just here. An interesting feature of the wild carrot is that in the centre, not all of them, but some of them have this red flower, which you can just about see. And I think there's some debate amongst botanists as to why that's there. It may be that it attracts insects, but we're not entirely sure, I would say. But this is the wild carrot, and as I say, we'll see quite a bit more of that further along.
So Rosie has asked, is the sound we can hear grasshoppers or crickets?
I don't know. I'm going to have to be honest, that's a really good question. I usually have homework to do when I do something like this, so that can be my homework for today. I shall find out for you. Very good question. I can tell you how you tell the difference by looking at them. The grasshoppers have got really short antennae and crickets have got really, really long antennae. But I'm going to have to check out the sound, I'm afraid. Good question. So also I should mention how the site is managed. It's managed with sheep grazing. So traditionally chalk downlands would have been managed in that way. They would have had sheep on here for centuries and centuries. And rabbits also did a bit of a job in keeping the scrub down. Then I believe there was a bit of a gap on this site, and then the Wildlife Trust reintroduced sheep in about 2005. So we have sheep on here now, and they're rotated around the site. And the other main task is sort of keeping on top of the scrub, because it's a bit of a balancing act. So a little bit of scrub is a really good habitat for a whole range of invertebrates, for birds and small mammals. But too much of it will take over the downland, and then you would lose the wildflowers. So the idea is to have some scrub at different age ranges, because again that is good for different species, and also it's nice to have some scrub edge, because that also is very good habitat. So it's a bit of a balancing act really, the management.
And how is the scrub managed? Is it through grazing, or is it volunteers?
Well, grazing initially probably will help quite a lot with stopping the new seedlings coming up, but volunteers as well, definitely. So it's a combination really of the two. I was just going to point out another plant down here, which is called salad burnet, and that's this one here. You can see with these small leaflets here. And it's finished flowering. It flowered a little bit earlier in the year, but salad burnet, if you crush it between your fingers, it tends to, I can't always smell it, but it's supposed to have a smell of cucumber. So you often see that sort of early in the spring. You see a red sort of haze across the downs, and that will be the salad burnet in flower. And you'll see yellow, and that will be the horseshoe vetch. They're the sort of earlier flowers that you tend to see on the downs.
So Richard has a question for you. Are most of these flowers likely to be still out in 3 weeks when I shall be down for Mum's 97th birthday in the village?
Oh wow, I think some of them will be, yes, yeah. I would think probably there'll still be some knapweed, some squinancy-wort. So yeah, I do think that some of them will be. Unfortunately, we've missed the orchids though, which is a real shame, but I'm going to take you to where they were, so you can come back next year maybe when those plants are here.
While you're walking,
Yeah.
Annette asked a tricky question.
Oh.
Has there been a drop in numbers of rabbits?
Oh.
Or myxomatosis was.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know how the numbers are currently. Again, it's going to be homework for me, that one, I think, to check. I'm not sure what the numbers are like at the moment. But certainly when myxomatosis first hit, that did affect them quite badly. And I believe that, you know, some of our grasslands back then did end up with more scrub because the rabbits had been doing quite a good job of keeping on top of it. But now I'm not quite sure what the numbers are like, but I will ask the reserves officer actually. He'll have a good idea of that. So we are moving towards the, well, my favourite bit really. We've got lots of lovely ladies' bed straw all in flower here. We've got a bit of scabious over here, which I haven't pointed out yet either. So I'm just going to put my glasses on for this. So this is a little bit of small scabious here, and I know that because the other scabious, it looks quite similar, is field scabious, but the small scabious, it's got these little black bristles on the underside. And actually, believe it or not, the petals are 5-lobed in small scabious, but 4-lobed in field scabious. So that's a good way to tell.
So Pat has a question. Are there any deer on the down?
I have seen deer down in the fields below, so I imagine that there must be up here, but I haven't ever seen any myself whilst I've been up here. But as I say, I've certainly seen them down in the fields down there. Oh, that's quite a nice breeze. It's actually quite warm. You can see that it's can be quite a harsh environment really for the plants that are up here. So they are well adapted to it. So we've got a few members of the pea family, for example, up here. So there's a little tiny flower here and here. So we've got, these are the bird's foot trefoil flowers. And the pea family are very good at coping where there are low nutrients because they can fix nitrogen. They've got this amazing symbiotic relationship with bacteria that actually can fix nitrogen from the air and convert it into a usable form for the plant. So they can cope really, really well on low fertility. So, and the pea family, for anyone that's interested in learning a bit more about how to identify wildflowers, every flower in the pea family has got a very characteristic way that the petals are arranged. So if you are able to look a little bit closer, you'll see that they all have this big standard petal up the top here, and then on the sides they've got 2 petals that we call wings, and underneath they've got 2 petals that we call a keel, like a boat. And when an insect lands, that all opens up and then it's able to be pollinated by those insects. And if you look at any plant in the pea family, so even this white clover over here, you know, this isn't just one flower, but this is made up of lots of tiny florets, and each one of those is arranged in the exact same way as this one over here. It will have those 5 petals, but just in miniature. So those are the pea family plants. So let's go through the gate. We want to get to the really nice bit. So usually I'm up here with groups of people doing wildflower ID courses and walks and talks, but obviously it's been a bit different this year. So we've had to do lots of things online, so this is all quite new to us. So it's strange talking to just my husband and a camera. Right, so we've got the archaeological mound over here, and quite a lot of wild carrot in here actually, in this section. We're going to go up to the best bit. Well, I say the best bit really because it's where all the orchids occur, and I really do love orchids. My family call them the O word because wherever we go we have to go and look for the orchids. So I'm just keeping my eyes peeled to see if there's anything different that we haven't yet seen. Oh, lovely patch of harebell. These are really beautiful, dainty, dainty little harebell. I love those. They're really nice. So we'll get to the end. I've no idea of time. How are we doing for time?
10 minutes.
Oh, only 10 minutes left. I need to walk quickly. I talk too much. So lots of beautiful scabious up here, wild carrot. There's a knapweed as well, which we've not yet seen. So it's sort of not looking its best, but this is a greater knapweed. So there'll be a few of those. Oh, there's a gatekeeper. So for the lady that was interested in butterflies, there's an orange gatekeeper just through there. Oh,
No.
disappeared. And this is Hempagrimony. So this plant is one of the later summer plants that is very good for butterflies. And there's a meadow brown butterfly just settled over on the scabious. There it goes. Right, we're going to have to go down a little bit of a slope in a second and hope that we don't fall whilst we're live. That would be funny.
Yes, Ali has confirmed that locals call the burial mound plum pudding.
Ah, yes, I have heard that, yes. I'm always amazed at just how quiet this site is. And it's so beautiful. I mean, just look at that view through there. Lovely sort of view of a wildflower meadow. Really beautiful. We're almost at the end point. The trick is choosing which bit to go down, isn't it? Possibly. Oh, I'll just point out the stemless thistle or dwarf thistle down here. These we often call picnickers thistles, and I nearly always manage to find those when I'm kneeling down to look at something. Ah, and this is something else I just want to point out. This is called a robin's pincushion. That's really interesting. So this is on a rose. It's actually a gall, and what happens is that a very, very tiny gall wasp actually lays its egg in the plant, and this is what happens in response. The plant grows this distorted tissue, and then those eggs can hatch into larvae, and they can live inside that gall until they're ready to hatch out into an adult. There are many different types of gall, and there are certain, all of the species that create them have their own particular host plants that they use, and this one is known as a robin's pincushion. So that's been created by a very tiny gall wasp. Right, now we're going to attempt the slope. Actually, it's not too bad, it's just a little slippery when it's wet. So we'll head down here. So a few weeks ago there would have been quite a lot of orchids down here. We had a lot of common spotted orchids here and also fragrant orchids. And we'll just go up the other side. Right. So this is my very favourite spot. And this is the south facing point. on this reserve, and I absolutely love it. You can see it's beautiful. It's, as I said, earlier in the year there would have been a lot of orchids here, maybe a month ago, fragrant orchids, common spotted orchids. I think there might be a couple of pyramidals just left, so we'll go and have a look. We've got lots of knapweed in flower, some common knapweed here. Just looking to see where the pyramidal orchids, I think we found some that were just going over. So you can see these are the orchids that have gone over now, so not the pyramidals, but as I say, we had fragrant orchids and common spotteds up here, but they've all gone over. Oh, there's a pyramidal that's just in flower. Here we go. So this is a pyramidal orchid, and obviously it's named because it tends, when it's just starting to come out, it's shaped very more pyramidal, and then as it becomes more mature, it becomes rounder. And all around us you can see these would have been the fragrant orchids, which have all gone over now, so there are quite a few, lots and lots actually, all around us here. I do love orchids. I think they're really quite fascinating. They produce masses of seed, but it's such tiny seed, it doesn't have any food to nourish it when it first starts out, so again it has a symbiotic relationship with a fungus, and that fungus provides the nutrients that it needs to grow, but it can't survive without that fungus, so it has this association with it. Different species, some species get rid of the fungus when they're more mature, some don't. This year seems to have been quite a good year for pyramidal orchids. I've seen quite a lot, and bee orchids in fact. I've seen quite a lot on roadside verges and places like that I haven't seen them before, so that's been really nice. But if you do come up here, then I would suggest perhaps a month earlier than now, so June time, and this spot here right at the far end really is very beautiful.
So the beech woodland behind you, what sort of flora would you find in there normally?
So in the beech woodland behind us, again a little bit earlier in the season, we would find white helleborines, so those are orchids, and also bird's nest orchids, which are really interesting. So, but they've finished flowering now, but they would have been a little bit earlier in the year, so it's definitely worth having a look in there for those as well. So I think we've just got only a few minutes left actually, so if we just take a stroll down here, and if anybody's got any other questions, please feel free to put them in the comments, and if we can't get around to answering them all right now, then obviously we will try later. But yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed it, and